Rick Riordan presents Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. 3. All of my aunties had woken up by now. Mom had to explain the situation to them, while the oldest one complained about having her sleep interrupted. Still, even she had to admit that we were in trouble. Mom and the two strongest aunties dragged the unconscious investigator into the parlor. I looked away, feeling a little guilty about all the trouble I'd caused, though the sound of his head thunking across the threshold gave me a moment of vindictive pleasure. They laid him on a quilt, as if they were going to nurse him back to health. The quilt would have to get washed afterward. I could guess who'd be stuck with that task. Mom took me aside while the others fussed over the investigator. Her fury gave off a bitter, acrid smell. I've told you time and again that using our powers will get us into trouble, she said. And to make matters worse, you had to attack the man. I could have gotten rid of him and he'd been none the wiser. I bit my tongue to keep from pointing out she'd been using fox powers herself. I just stared at the floor and muttered, "Yes, Mom." "Go clean up the mess in the dining room," she said after a searching pause. "I'll deal with you later." I recognized that grim tone that didn't argue. Instead, I headed back into the dining room, seething, and retrieved a threadbare bag. We used to borrow a robot housekeeper from the neighbors, but it had broken down a year ago. I missed that housekeeper almost as much as I missed my brother, whatever trouble he had gotten into. While I knelt and scrubbed, Mom and the aunties held council in the parlor. We can't simply kill the man. Even if we were the ones being threatened, we'd wind up taking the blame, said the one I disliked the most, Auntie Arum, Bora's mom. For once, I agreed with her, though. "We can't throw him into the authorities either," Mom snapped back. Good to know, I thought. As I was trying to eavesdrop on the rest of their conversation, Bora and her younger brother clomped into the dining room, tracking dark pickled leaves all over the floor. "Hey," Bora said in a hushed voice, "did you throw a tantrum with our food? And why is there a dead guy in our parlor?" "He's unconscious, not dead," I said. "How do you know?" "Look," I said, not wanting to get into it with her. "I have to clean this up." I stabbed my finger toward the corner. "Could you stand over there?" Manshik obediently trudged to the corner. Unlike his sister, he wasn't so bad. He was the only boy out of all of my cousins. Most foxes chose to be female, like Mom and all my aunties, because it is traditional. Manshik just insisted on being male, though because he wanted to be like June, and no one in the family hassled him about it. "Seriously," Bora said, planting herself in my way when I attempted to mop up spilled cinnamon ginger punch. "What's going on?" She was going to be in my face until I gave in, so I explained. "I can't believe you're going to serve the investigator that nasty stuff," Bora said, wrinkling her nose at some dark pickled leaves, as if that were the most important thing that had happened. "We're the only family in the country that will touch it." "Food is food," I said. How could I get Bora to go away? Mom and the aunties were discussing my fate, as well as that of the investigator. I couldn't hear them while Bora was nattering at me. I scrubbed harder. Maybe if I ignored her long enough, she'd get bored and scoot. "Call the local magistrate," Auntie Aram was saying. "Surely they'll understand that." "Hey!" Bora kicked a bowl to get my attention. Its contents scattered, making a greasy mess of the section of floor I'd just scrubbed. "Min, stop spacing out." I lost my patience and flung the dirty rag at her face. She shrieked as though I'd scalded her. Manshik ran forward and tugged on her arm. He always hated it when people fought. I scowled at him and he blanched. Mom appeared at the doorway. What in the name of heaven? She stared at the rag on Bora's face, then strode forward and plucked it off. Min, she said. Bora got in the way when I'm not interested, Mom said. Min, this situation is serious. I need you to do what you're told for once, with no loopholes or clever tricks. I kept my hand loose at my sides, even though I wanted to ball them into fists, and I put on my meekest expression. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll get back to work. We're going to have an even longer discussion after we figured out how we're going to protect the family, she said, frowning severely at me, starting with your inability to follow directions. Bora, Manchik, why don't you get to work in the hydroponics dome? My cousins knew better than to argue with Mom when she was in this mood. They bowed and scurried off. Sionmi, another one of the aunties, called to my mom. Come back here and let the children sort things out among themselves. We have matters to settle. Auntie Aram added, Your daughter's been a handful ever since. The oldest auntie shushed her, but I knew how that sentence would have ended. Ever since June left. My mouth tasted sour. Still, I kept quiet. The last thing I needed was to draw the adults' attention once more. Mom handed me the rag. I pasted a smile on my face, then made a show of scrubbing. Now I felt angry with the quantity of food I'd splattered over the floor while fighting the courier. Aside from the dark pickled leaves, I'd picked out the good stuff because Mom would have wanted to impress a guest. We never had much of it on hand, and it had gone to waste. At least with Bora and her brother gone, I could concentrate on eavesdropping. We can't drug him into forgetfulness, the oldest auntie was saying in a whiny tone. They'd consider that an even worse offense than using charm. Such terrible luck, having investigators show up at her house. What? Auntie Aram asked. You expect our local hospital to be able to detect subtle poisons? I'm more concerned about what June's got tangled up in, Mom said. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The investigator seemed to think that June's being a fox is significant, he said. That's why they needed the cadet, as if the fleet had recruited June specifically because of his powers. It wasn't just normal distrust of our kind. Too bad we can't just keep the investigator charmed here, Auntie Aram said. I almost dropped a bowl I'd been putting into the sink as I examined the stern investigator meekly following Auntie Aram around and smiling at everything she said, maybe even doing some of the chores normally assigned to me. Too bad indeed. No, someone would notice his absence and come looking for him, Mom said, while I wrung out the rag and freshened it up with clean water. Mom and the aunties squabbled over the appropriateness of bribery. Predictably, Mom opposed it, while the oldest auntie and Auntie Aram argued that it would save trouble down the line. They'd let it slip that they'd stashed some jades, interstellar chits, more valuable than our planetary currency, and the rickety old storeroom cabinet. I should have guessed it had a false bottom for hiding things. Well, they discussed which local officials would be the most helpful if we bribed them. My mind puzzled over the investigator. There was no way, especially now, I'd be able to get more information out of him about my brother's disappearance. What had June been trying to signal with that letter? I stopped cleaning for a few minutes and listened intently. The adults gave me no sign that they'd notice the lull in my action. With any luck, they'd gotten caught up in their own concerns. It wouldn't notice if I slipped away. I crept outside and peeked through one of the windows in the hydroponics dome. Bora had herded her brother and our other cousins inside. Good. I had a few minutes' peace for thinking. At any other time, I would have enjoyed gardening with them amid the luminous green columns of our crops. Outside of domes like this, plants struggled to grow in dusty Jinju. Only purple-tinged shrubs and low trees thrived. Right now, though, I couldn't relax into the familiar work. Mom was mad at me, not without cause, and I had to figure out how to get myself and the rest of us out of this fix. First, I needed to get the spilled food out of my hair. Our home had a single sonic shower for all of us. Usually, I had to wait for my turn, but now, with everyone else otherwise occupied, the stall was free. The shower frequently made a grating, buzzing noise, no matter how often I had tinkered with it. Luckily, it wasn't too loud this time. No need for Mom to know I wasn't still doing chores. I just finished changing into a fresh tunic and pair of pants when Bora pounded on the bathroom door. "Are you done yet? I need to wash my hands." Be nice to her, I reminded myself. She could probably smell my annoyance, just as I could smell hers. It was hard to tell a lie to a fellow fox. I tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear and stepped out of the bathroom. Bora wrinkled her nose. "It took you long enough to clean yourself up." "We're not all as talented as you are," I said dryly. Bora scoffed. "You're just jealous you can't make your hair presentable without magicking it up." Pointedly, I turned my back on her. "Don't you have somewhere to be?" I asked. I headed to the laundry room to drop off my soiled clothes. If only I'd been born half a month earlier, I would be the older one and wouldn't have to put up with her attitude. He followed me. Too bad June messed things up for the rest of us. There has to be more to the story, I shot back. The investigator probably left out details to see if he could catch us in a lie. She ignored my response, as usual. "And you're just as bad as June. What were you thinking, attacking a guest?" "I thought he was going for his gun." "You would have done the same thing. Ordinarily, Bora would have needled me further about my rashness, but she still had my brother on her mind. All June's big talk about rising through the ranks and finding allies who would help him make Jinju a better place. And what does he do? He runs off and disgraces the whole family. Bora and I had never gotten along, but she and June had often spent time together. For the first time, I wonder if she missed him as much as I did, despite all the jibes. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," I said. It had to be. June and I used to sneak outside late at night, stare up into the sky with its jewel spill of stars and moons. As we lay there, he would talk about how much he wanted to serve on a Space Force's battlecruiser and visit every one of the 1,000 worlds. Also, unlike me, he was obedient. He always played by the rules. The investigator seems convinced that June went after the Dragon Pearl, I went on, thinking out loud. But June is no renegade. He'd make a terrible smuggler or pirate. The corners of Bora's mouth turned up in a suddenly sly expression. "I'll make you a bet." Footsteps approached. By mutual silent agreement, we slipped into the next room and hid behind the door, waiting for them to pass us by. After they had gone, Bora whispered, "If June comes back within a year, I'll do all your chores for the next 6 months." Yeah, I would like that would ever happen. She'd weasel her way out of the agreement. Nevertheless, I couldn't resist a bet, especially since I knew my brother was being falsely accused. The satisfaction of proving her wrong would be enough for me. "And if he doesn't?" I asked, also whispering. "You'll do mine." I held my hand out. She laid hers atop it, palm to palm. "Done," I said. She tossed her head. Get ready to clean the toilet often, men. Then she glided out of the room, not bothering to shut the door behind her. Ha! Cleaning the toilet, while gross, wasn't hard. Dealing with the hydroponics eco-filters, on the other hand, was a different matter. If they failed, we'd all starve. Or else, we'd have to eat nasty, outdated ration bars until a real eco-technician could fix the system. The job always fell to me because I was the only one in the family who could coax the filter to behave. Mom said I'd picked up the knack from my technician father. When I was very small, he had encouraged me to work alongside him, and I enjoyed it. I was proud of my skill with machines, but on the occasion I caught Mom watching me use Dad's tool. Her expression was sad. Even if I won Boar's bet, I'd still end up having to do all of the maintenance work. I certainly couldn't rely on her to keep the eco-filters running. She'd probably had that in mind when she proposed the bet. From down the hall, a snatch of conversation drifted to me, distracting me from my thoughts. Sent men to JB Village. It was my oldest auntie, sounding very firm. Still have some friends there. The authorities can't arrest her if they can't find her. And JB is so remote, nobody goes there if they can help it. No way I was letting myself be shipped off to some family friends I'd never heard of. I shuddered just thinking about it. But it was clear I couldn't stay home after what I'd done either. That, plus Boar's sniping about June, made up my mind. I would go after my brother. Somebody had to track him down, and I was the best person for the job. I'd avoid being exiled to somewhere horrible and isolated. Best of all, once I disappeared, my family could blame me for assaulting the investigator and using fox magic, and they could escape punishment. I was sure my wily aunties would figure out a way to convince the local authorities to keep the family's tried entity a secret. I slipped over to the closet where we kids stored our personal items. As second oldest, I had the second highest shelf to myself. It contained all of my meager belongings, faded clothes folded to my mom's painstaking standards, my breathing masks, along with some extra filters, an outdated data slate I had to share whenever someone asked, and a patched-up backpack, which Auntie Aram had been about to throw out until I begged for it. And one more thing, a brush and ink portrait of Mom, Dad, June, and me as a baby, done on pale silk, which was marred only by a blotch in the lower left corner. I tried to remove the stain, but I couldn't do much without risking damage to the work. If it weren't for this portrait, which June had left with me, I wouldn't remember Dad's face at all. June and I had inherited Dad's quizzical eyes and his narrow chin. I had Mom's smile, which I seldom saw on her anywhere. In the portrait, she was smiling faintly, as though trying not to laugh at something one of us had just said. All four of us were wearing festival clothes. I could imagine the bright colors and embroidery, the latter cunningly hinted at by stylized dabs of ink. I hadn't owned any garments that fine since my father's death. I rolled up the silk and tucked it into a scroll case made of battered green plastic. The portrait deserved better. I used to image purchasing a replacement case carved from imported mist ivory or sablewood, but our money had to be saved for more important things. The plastic case did the job. Then I retrieved the backpack and stuffed my possessions into it. While I could outfit myself with the help of shape-shifting magic, maintaining the illusion required effort and a good memory for details. I'd save that for times when I had no other choice. The masks and filters went into a pouch on the front, while I nestled the scroll case among some folded pants. I shouldered the backpack and crept toward the storage room. This would be the tricky part. The adults were still talking loudly enough for me to hear them, although it was hard to discern the words from here. That didn't mean they wouldn't hear me rummaging through the cabinet. I'd have to be quiet. "Min?" said a small voice from behind me. I'd been so focused on the adults, I hadn't heard Manchik pad around the corner with a basket full of laundry. I decided to go on the offensive before he asked me what I was doing with my backpack. I gestured for him to follow me into a side room. "Weren't you supposed to do that earlier this morning?" I demanded in a hushed voice. That may or may not have been true. I knew Manchik, though he was young enough to get flustered easily. No such luck today. "You're not going somewhere, are you?" he asked, frowning. "Of course not," I lied. "Since you had the basket, I decided to use my backpack to take my dirty clothes to the laundry room." He held out the basket helpfully. Heaven save me from cooperative younger cousins. I performed the best smile and emptied some of my clothes into the basket, deliberately rumpling them in the process. "Thanks," I said, keeping the sarcasm out of my voice with an effort. "I have to check the air filters, okay? If anyone asks, I'm going to be busy for a while." Manchik pulled a face. "Your mom seems mad. She can come get me when she's ready to yell at me. Just go ahead and deal with the laundry." As he trotted off, I eyed my mostly emptied backpack and sighed. At least no one interrupted me when I went to the cabinet. I carefully slid open the false bottom and was amazed by the size of the cache inside. We could have been living a little less frugally all these years. But right then, I was thankful for my auntie's thriftiness. As much as I hated to steal from them, I needed some jades. Fox magic wasn't any good for conjuring money. Fake currency and other valuables disappeared soon after they left her hands, and I had to be prepared for a long trip. Then I hesitated. If my family ended up having to bribe the authorities in order to stay out of trouble, who knew how many checks they would need? I ended up only taking a couple of fistfuls. My backpack felt heavier and heavier with each tiptoe I took toward the back door. I'd never even flown before, and here I was preparing to journey to the stars. What other choice did I have? I had no intention of going to jail or being shuttled off to the boonies. More important, June needed me. Once I stepped outside, I didn't look